Hola, Benny Fergusson here, and today we are talking all about range of motion. Now I've got a list of questions here and I'm going to start to address them, but specifically I'd like to talk about the topic of range of motion and movement habits. Now, the reason why I would like to talk about that is it's very common when you experience limited range of motion in the body, and I've been working with people long enough to pick up some trends, is let's say maybe they're limited range in the neck. So they go and stretch it, and stretching can be great. I'm a big advocate of stretching, and it's a very valuable practice when developing the body and looking to create more levels of freedom in it. However, there's one little thing that gets neglected all the time that I'd really like to share with you today, and that is really understanding the habits of thought, the habits of emotion, the physical habits that you do with your body unconsciously every day. So say you do that stretch in the neck and then you get that freedom, but then you're perpetuating states of stress in your life, or maybe you just find yourself resting this way all the time, or when you're at your desk you're always using your clicker on one particular side, or you're driving with one particular side, all sorts of different things. These have an effect on your body, and you can do 3 sets of 10 or whatever with your stretching, or hold the stretch for a minute, or however you choose to stretch, and there's lots of ways that I talk about that I find very effective. You can go about all those different ways, but it's nothing. It's so insignificant to the effect of the 24 hours a day of an unbalanced movement habit. So I'm just going to go through some of these questions and start to talk about looking to address the movement habit that can be starting to causing these challenges. So I'll just go from the top. I've categorized them. There's challenges with hips, there's challenges with ankles, there's challenges with the spine, there's challenges with combination of those, of the hips and the spine. So I'll just go through a couple just randomly and just talk about them, and hopefully it will help you on your journey, and that's what I'm all about. So if we look at, so first, this is a question from Mason, and he is having challenge with his hips, in the groin especially. So if we look at the hips, I'm a big advocate of standing and the practice and developing the practice of standing. So say for instance you have a postural habit to anteriorly tilt the hips, or bear weight on your heels. What can start to happen is, this can start to link with the lower back, and then over time then the hip flexors can start to get into a perpetual tonic state of contraction, or a habitual state of contraction. So then you go to stretch out the hip flexors and you do a couple of sets. Maybe a lot of people don't really do enough volume. There's a good tip there. But then you go about your day and then you just perpetuate that posture. No amount of stretching is going to correct that. You need to correct the unconscious movement habit. So let's have a look. So Nick had a question about releasing the psoas through movement for referred back pain. So here's an interesting concept to have a look at. So the psoas runs deep into the hips. A lot of the time, and I noticed, and I learned this through standing meditation, was for me in particular, my psoas was really tight, and there was a lot of emotion in there when I started to release it. But what I noticed is my femurs were in a habitual state of being pulled into the hip socket right up in there. So when I went to stretch it, I'd kind of get this lock right there when it was in there. So I needed to learn how to consciously relax the psoas, and as I started to do that, the femurs then started to move out and open up, and it feels like your hip's actually widening. I couldn't have just stretched the muscle because I was just doing that all the time. All the time it was in a habitual state of contraction. Hopefully you're getting the trend here. So the moral of today's story is, before you go into specific practices of stretching the area that you feel the tension, feel the lack of range of motion, start to ask yourself the question, or observe in your daily life, am I in a habitual state of contraction or flaccidity? Am I in a habitual state of contraction or flaccidity? And when I say flaccidity, it's sort of like there's some areas that might be overly contracted and some areas that might be overly flaccid and loose. So these are often things that can cause pain in the body. So start to notice that and then start to look at, is this a pattern of thought that's creating it? Am I just holding a certain loop of thought? When I have this thought, does it then reflect in my body? Am I in a perpetual state of emotion? Maybe I interact with certain people, your parents, your siblings, or at work, and then you develop this emotion. Maybe you feel it in your gut build up, and then the gut tightens up, and that affects your whole physiology. Remembering that there is no way to separate or isolate anything in your body. It is one connected system. And my intent always is to look to treat it in that way and take away the blockages that get in the way from your whole system feeling and being able to move in a connected way. So there's some tips. I hope they help in your improving range of motion efforts so you can flow around and be more fluid and experience the potential that your body has. So if you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to help. Be well. I'll see you again very soon.